Hey everybody, Zian over here from Nintendo Life. So today I've got a big old question for Panel de Pon John.
Panel de John.
Yeah, that's your name now. Have you not gotten the letter yet?
Not yet.
Soon. It'll show up. So obviously, Metroid Dread is here. Lots of people are ranting and raving about it. I've gone ahead and muted Metroid Dread on Twitter myself, only because I don't want spoilers for the game, because I haven't played it yet. But so what I'm curious, let's say I've never played a Metroid game before. Do you feel, as someone who has played Metroid Dread, because you've beaten Dread now, right, John?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good to find that out. Can you imagine if I was asking this question to you and you had not?
Zion, I've not touched this game yet. It's just
Well, John, okay. So do you think Dread is a good starting point for someone who's never played, or even just someone who's played maybe one, or wants to find out what the series is like?
I totally do. I think the big thing to take into account with Metroid is there are a lot of diehard fans, and if you're intimidated, just remember that they likely started with much more intimidating games than Dread. I think Dread is I think it's a great compromise between the older Metroids and the newer Metroids, where it doesn't guide you everywhere, but it does like intelligently sort of lead you where to go. And because of that, yeah, I think this is totally a great way to start, and it's definitely a lot easier to get into than, say, Super, or especially the first game. So yeah, I totally think this is a good place to start if you wanted to dive into Metroid. The story side may be a bit intimidating, but it does relay the key events of previous games right at the start in the prologue. But there's definitely a culmination of the story here that you'll benefit more if you know the entire lore, but it's not entirely necessary though.
One of the big things that I've seen, even when the game was revealed, was that Metroid Dread is supposed to be the fifth and final game in the series. So, do you think if you went into Metroid Dread not knowing the things of the past, that you would have had, a worse experience? I would say. Do you think it's worthwhile for someone to go and play the other Metroid games before this, or do you think it really does kind of round things up well enough at the beginning or throughout the story?
Yeah, I feel like you will have a better time if you go in knowing everything. That said, though, Metroid's story isn't that in-depth.
Sure.
The key beats are, there's a baby Metroid, the space pirates take it, then that Metroid dies and the DNA goes onto Samus. Yeah, so she has the DNA, Samus gets attacked by the X, and then they need to use the Metroid DNA to free her. That's basically it. That's basically the entire story up until now.
Okay.
So all you need to know is Samus has some Metroid DNA in her. That's really all you have to know. And I think that, knowing that, you'll probably still have a good time understanding the story. But longtime fans will have moments where they're like, oh my god, they're doing this? There's revelation moments that you'll definitely perceive in a higher regard if you're someone who has been with the series for a long time. With that said, though, it's not entirely necessary.
That's a really good point too, because I guess so. I've only played Metroid Zero Mission and Samus Returns, the remake of 2, and I guess there's always been story at the beginning and the end of the games. I mean, there is a story, but it doesn't seem like that is the focus of the game. Do you feel does Metroid Dread throw in more story here and there, or does it follow the path of other Metroids as far as that goes?
Yes, it's mostly the path of other Metroids. You're totally right. Metroid Fusion's story is basically the intro. You don't have to know that much more about the story. Of course, there are story beats, but the core moments are right in the prologue. And Fusion's prologue is basically also Dread's prologue. So most of what happens in that game is told straight away. Dread does have moments, though, where there are cutscenes. I don't want to spoil anything, but there are some pretty big revelations, and I do think that everyone will understand them. I don't think it's going to be something where it's like, oh, you have to be a Metroid fan to understand what's going on here. No, I think everyone's going to get it. It's pretty cut clear, so yeah, I don't think it's going to be that intimidating.
So I guess I haven't really gotten your overall opinions. I mean, I've read a little bit on Twitter about what you feel about Dread and things like that, and we don't have to go off on a get your full review here or anything. But do you think after playing Dread, do you think Metroid Dread has some just modern conveniences that might discourage players from going back and playing some of the older titles?
Now that's a question.
I know, that's big.
For a long time, I thought that Zero Mission was my favorite, and it's definitely one of my favorites. But then, when Dread got announced, I went back and played every mainline game in the series, And I forgot just how good Super was. And you're right, that there totally are moments in Super where it doesn't tell you, or even illustrate what direction you should go in. And I think there was one moment where I had to like Google, like, what do you do after this boss? Like, where do you go? And then I was on my right track again. Dread didn't have moments like that. With Dread, I was pretty much always pushing myself forward, and there were moments where I was like, okay, where do I go? But then I opened my map and it was pretty clear, like, oh, I got this upgrade, I'll use it on this thing that the map is illustrating I haven't been to yet. So in that respect, Dread is much easier to navigate, and it just, as a whole, Dread feels way better to control than previous games. But with my experience with Zero Mission going back to Super, I don't think that lessened my enjoyment. I think Super still held up really well on its own merits. So I don't think it's going to make any game feel worse, but I do think it's probably the best feeling of any Metroid.
Wow, interesting. Okay. So I guess that kind of rolls into a question. I kind of wanted to ask this later, but it fits perfect now. So do you feel that Dread is an excellent showcase of what the Metroid series is? Like I don't know how to ask this question without saying, is it the best first place to start? If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find a way to not ask that, but I think
I totally get what you're trying to say here. And I remember you were playing Zero Mission, Xeon, and you said there was one point you were stuck where there was like this fake lava, and you weren't sure to go down there.
Oh yeah.
And that was also a trope of the first Metroid on the NES, where there's just like these fake outs. And in Fusion too, there are moments where you're meant to bomb these very specific tiles, and there weren't moments like that in Dread. I felt like Dread was usually very good at showcasing what you're meant to do, and I was never led like aimlessly around, bombing or shooting walls, not knowing where to go. I think it got rid of the most tedious parts of Metroid, while maintaining what the core DNA has always been about. And Metroid's at its best when you feel like you're clever for playing. And so in Fusion, I always felt like I was being led to the next waypoint, and I didn't like that much. But in Super, I felt like I was discovering my path on my own, even if I did get stuck sometimes. But Dread, it maintains that, while also not getting you stuck that much. And your mileage may vary, maybe you will get lost every now and then. But for me personally, it was just this seamless flow from beginning to end. But I never felt like I was being led down the right path. It was just intelligently laid out in a way that makes you discover it. So I think this is the most intelligent Metroid. And it's, in my opinion, yeah, I think it's a great place to start. And I think it may do so much of what the series is known for better than any other entry. And
now, Metroid Dread is being, I suppose it's mainly developed by Mercury Steam, right? The team that did Samus Returns on 3DS?
Yeah, and Lord of Shadow, they did the Castlevania games.
That's right. So do you feel, I know when I played Samus Returns, especially going from Super Metroid or to Zero Mission, I noticed that there were a lot more, I don't know if these fall into the accessibility category necessarily, but that there were just a lot of ways that the game could help you if you got lost. Like there was the little ability that you could turn on that would tell you if there was like a breakable wall nearby, or you could go back to the like Metroid shrine essentially, and it would tell you the direction that you needed to go. Does Metroid Dread have optional tips, I suppose, like that, where you can choose to use these if you want, or you can not, you can ignore them?
So kinda, yeah. The scan pulse from Samus Returns is back again. You get it fairly late into the adventure, but I don't think you really need it until late into the adventure either. But the thing you said about the Metroid, that you go back to the statue and it tells you where to find the next one, there's nothing really like that in here. And I think that may be just a difference in game design, because Metroid 2 was all about sort of hunting down Metroids, and that's not really the aim here anymore. So I don't think there's really that many accessibility options, and that may be a fault against the game. But I also feel like it's always fairly clear what you're meant to do next. Like, let's say you get the wave beam, your map will tell you where wave beam doors are. So if you stumbled across an obstacle in the past that you didn't have the right upgrade for, that gets labeled on your map. So it would say like wave beam door, charge beam door, bomb door, or whatever, something like that. And so you can always look at your map when you got an upgrade and be like, okay, I've seen something before, but I can't remember where. And you just sort of scan all over your map and you'll find something eventually. So I wouldn't say it's accessible. It definitely doesn't leave you behind if you forget like where you've been in the past.
So I suppose in a sense too, like for me, I think when I played through Samus Returns, I enjoyed it, it definitely didn't have the same effect on me that Zero Mission did, or even the atmosphere of Super Metroid, of just, the kind of like you said, the excitement of getting lost and finding your way. It always kind of felt like I knew where I was going in Samus Returns. And so in a way, do you think that Dread just does that better then as well?
Yeah. I've quite vocally said before, I'm not a big fan of Metroid 2. I think Samus Returns did a really good job of modernizing it, but it was still stuck in the roots of that game. And that was all about these sort of linear small areas and hunting down Metroids, and it felt a bit slow. So Dread takes the original formula back. It's far more in line with Metroid 1 and Super Metroid. And also, I feel like it takes the mechanical evolutions of Samus Returns, but does them way better. So in Samus Returns, they introduced the counter, and the counter was a great move, but the problem was every enemy used it. Like every single enemy would lunge towards you. And in Dread, there are still some that do that, but not all of them do. And I think that's less exhausting. And plus, you have all these other combat tools too. So yeah, I think it's just a far better balanced game than Samus Returns was. Like, that was a learning experiment for Mercury Steam, I feel. And they've just nailed the foundation this time.
It seems like the game is, I don't want to say it's short, but I've seen some people post like 8-hour playthroughs, 10-hour playthroughs, things like that online. Is there reason to go back to it after you've played it once already as well?
Yeah. So first as well though, I'd say it's the longest 2D Metroid game. I think I finished all the other ones. Like Samus Returns was quite long too. But like Metroid 1 to 4, they all took me like 2 to 4 hours, like maybe 5 tops. Like 7 to 8 hours, or even 10 for Dread, it's pretty beefy compared to what's come before. But yeah, there is reason to go back. I find the collectibles, there's a lot of them scattered around the map. And I'm still trying to get 100% at the moment, but it really does add quite a bit of extra time to your clock. And when you do that, you get some unlockable art pieces and things like that, a bit more lore to the story. And there's also speedrunning, which is a major thing for Metroid. So when you beat the game, you get your timer, and it tells you how well you've done. And depending how fast you beat the game, you also unlock other pieces of artwork too. So there's an incentive to beat the game even faster each time. And I think this is a kind of game that you're going to be replaying so much over the Switch's life. Maybe it's to get better speedrun times, or maybe it's just to play the game again. Just personally speaking, I've played Super Metroid a lot in my lifetime, and I think Dread is going to be like that game. It's going to be the kind of game that I just return to and feel like cozy. Like let's say you're ill one day, let's say you're homesick, you're on the sofa with some covers, and you're just trying to get better. I think Dread's going to be that game that's going to like keep you company and make you feel like you're at home.
Man, John's sick. He can't go to school. He can't do YouTube. He's going to sit on the couch and play Dread all day. Considering that you've played all of the other Metroid mainline games, how do you feel the difficulty fares this time around? Do you think newcomers could potentially have trouble with it?
So Dread is tough. It does get tough in boss fights, but it never gets frustrating, and I think a big part of that is the autosave and checkpoints. So in like Super Metroid, if you died, you go back to the last save room. But in Dread, if you die, you go straight back to the door before the boss. And I think that makes it far less tedious. The bosses themselves are really well designed, but they're also very, very tough, especially the final boss. And getting them down, it did take me a lot of tries, but I always felt it was fair. Like, once you learn their patterns, I think you can take them down without even taking a hit. But in your first entrance, you probably will die. And I don't think that's a fault of the game. I think that's just it's going back to the sort of old school design of bosses,
sure.
Where it wasn't just these very obvious patterns. You've got to learn them, and I actually kind of prefer that to a lot of bosses these days. So yeah, it is tough, but I don't think it's unfairly tough.
So a final question, John. At least I think this is the last. There's a lot of Metroid style games out there, Metroidvanias, if you will, right? And it's been a very popular genre for the past cajillion years. And there's a lot of them out there that are fairly cheap these days. There's, Hollow Knight is a good example of that. So I guess if anyone's made it to the end of this video, they're probably still curious if they should buy Metroid Dread or not. Do you think it's worth?
It's a hard one to phrase.
It is. Do you think this is a good place for someone to throw $60? Do you think this is a good game to throw $60 at, to be unsure if they're going to like it or not? Do you think there's a different place they should start first? Or do you fully believe Metroid Dread is the place to be if you're unsure?
So the $60 question it's been a big one on Twitter lately. It's a valid question though. If you got $60 and you're not sure if this game is going to be for you, I would recommend just trying Super Metroid on Super Nintendo Online. And if you despise that, then probably don't go near Dread, 'cause it's still a Metroid game. But if there are elements that you love, but don't necessarily, like there's some that you may not like as much, then I think Dread may resolve those. And if you just love Super Metroid, then yeah, no question, go for Dread. As for like just the whole $60 argument, I feel like Metroid Dread I have enjoyed and appreciated and adored more than any other $60 game I've purchased in recent memory. And it's such, like, value is such a hard thing to judge. Everyone judges games differently. Well, you look at, like, this is a bad example, but look at Undertale. That's a really cheap game, and Earthbound was a major influence for that. So, why would you put down, I don't know, like $700 on Earthbound when you can pay for Undertale for like 10? Like, it's a bad comparison. The reason for that, though, is because people value it differently. You want Earthbound because you want Earthbound. Metroid, I think it justifies its price a bit with its brand and its legacy. So like Hollow Knight is ridiculously undervalued. It's an amazing game, it's huge, there's so much to enjoy, and it's beautiful too. But Metroid is this thing we've been wanting for nearly 2 decades. And in terms of just quality and polish, I feel like it offers a different experience to many other indie games. You can feel a level of, I guess, higher value in here. Like you can tell like a larger team working under Nintendo worked on this. The production of the animation and visuals is outstanding. So yeah, I think it's worth $60 to me. If you're hesitant, play other Metroid games and see if you like them. But I don't think the question should be whether it's worth $60. It's just whether you're willing to spend $60.
I think that might be where a lot of people are left unsure about whether or not they should buy this game. I mean, Samus Returns came out on the 3DS, and we've talked about this before, but it came out at a time where so many people didn't care about the 3DS anymore, and they didn't give it a shot. And then we also had Metroid Federation Force and Other M, and both of those games got heavily thrown to the curb because they weren't what the fandom wanted. And so yeah, I feel like we haven't really had a good chance to spend a boatload of money on a standard Metroid game in a long time, and it's like an entire different generation is around now. And so I'm glad the way that you worded that answer, by the way, because I think I didn't mean it to come off as is the game worth 60, but I think but I think you answered it absolutely correct in the fact that there's a lot of people that are going to be curious if that is they're going to be thinking that themselves, I think. And so yeah, so well put, John.
Yeah, and I bought the limited edition. So
oh
I spent
my gosh,
like £80. So at the end of the day, though, Metroid Dread is just so fun. And I think I can't imagine a situation where I beat it and say, "Oh, what a rip-off!" Because it's just, it is. I think it is a defining game for the Switch. The Switch feels like a better console for having Metroid Dread. So yeah, if you're hesitant, I'll give it my highest recommendation, but just suggest that you play other Metroid games first if you're really not sure.
Well, I think you did a great job answering all of these questions, John. So thank you so much for that. I hope it helps. It already seems like, I could be wrong, but is it the best-selling Metroid game right now, or is that just in certain regions? Or have you heard?
Yeah, so in certain regions, it seems like in the UK it may be, but they have not released US numbers. So we're waiting for the global numbers. Japan's also very well right now, but it looks like, yeah, probably will be. The highest-selling Metroid is Metroid Prime on GameCube. I think that was like 2.8 million. So the ceiling isn't enormous, but this one feels like it's done well. Like my friend list on Switch, on the trending page, it said like 70 of your friends have played this recently, that's nuts.
Dang. Yeah, I it's funny that you bring that up too, because yeah, I think I was looking at my friends list on that Friday, and I think there was like one person that was active amongst all of the other people that were active, and they were playing something else, and all my brain could think of was like, why are you not playing Dread? And I haven't even played Dread yet because
you're playing Kingdom Hearts.
I do have Kingdom Hearts on the brain, right? Yeah, I just finished the cutscenes for Chain of Memories last night, so so I'm gonna start too. But yeah, hey, if you're playing Kingdom Hearts, let us know in the comments down below. I would personally love to hear from you. But John, you also bought Kingdom Hearts,
Yeah,
didn't
and I'm
you?
going to start soon as well. So I've been trying to wrap up all my Metroid Dread stuff. Like, once I get 100% on the items, I'm going to boot up Kingdom Hearts 1 and start again. Because I've played that one before, but it's been years, so I want to go back and start, like, fresh.
This sounds like a discussion that we should have for another time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you all so much for hanging out and listening to us chat about Metroid Dread. Hopefully this has given you some answers to determine if you should buy the game or not, or even buy it for a significant other or your nephew for Christmas or something like that. Remember, Metroid Dread only has a T rating in the US. I imagine it has a low PEGI rating as well, so you don't have to worry about your relatives being scared about this game, even though it has Dread in the title. It's probably going to be fine, right? John, is it very scary? I should have asked you that too.
It can be tense. Like, the Emmy situations can definitely have you on your toes. I wouldn't say it's scary, though. Like, I know people, like, they speak of Metroid as a horror game. I don't feel like it is. I've never really felt fear from Metroid, but it definitely does get tense.
I don't know how that entire question slipped my mind until now, but yeah, I guess if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, then why don't you go ahead and determine if that subscribe button is worth a good old free click from you. Just decide right now, and if it is, please click it, because that helps us a lot, and then you get to see more of our stuff. And yeah, let us know in the comments below if you've picked up Dread, or if you're planning on picking it up, or if you're on the fence, or if this has helped you out or not. We would love to hear from you. And thank you all so much for watching. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life. We've got John over here as well. He can say something at the end if he wants, and we will see you next time.
Metroid Other M is PEGI 16, and all the others are PEGI 12. So Other M, most mature one.